Well, now I think dating intentionally means dating with a purpose.
Yeah.
Like you have a purpose behind all of your actions in dating.
Yeah, this was something I certainly had to learn.
Hi, I'm Yui Shu.
And I'm Julie Krafchick.
We're active daters turned dating sociologists.
Here to dive into everything modern dating and relationships.
Welcome to the DATEABLE podcast.
Before we get into this episode, a quick word from our sponsors that make it possible. Did you know we're eating and drinking roughly a credit card's worth of plastic a week? Yep, that's right. Blue Land set out to do something about it, eliminate the need for single-use plastic in the cleaning products we reach for the most. I'm absolutely obsessed with Blue Land for a couple of reasons. 1, how they're helping the environment. 2, how convenient they make my life. And 3, how freaking beautiful their pastel containers are. All you have to do is fill your reusable bottles with water, drop in the tablets, and wait for them to dissolve. You'll never have to grab bulky cleaning products on your groceries run again. My partner was a little skeptical the other day if the dishwasher tablets would work as well as the pods we usually use, but after the dishes came out sparkling clean, he was sold as well. It's not only super convenient, but Blue Land is also affordable. Refills start at just $2.25, and you can even set up a subscription or buy in bulk for additional savings. Blue Land has a special offer for listeners. Right now, get 15% off your first order by going to blueland.com/dateable. You won't want to miss this. blueland.com/dateable for 15% off. That's blueland.com/dateable to get 15% off.
Hey, do you ever look at your closet and think you have nothing to wear? Or is it just me? It's not just me, right? This is why I can't believe I didn't discover Armoire clothing rentals earlier. With an Armoire membership, I can now build the perfect wardrobe with high-quality brands that I wouldn't normally think I could afford, such as Philippe Lim, Monique Lhuillier, and Marni. Doesn't that just sound fancy? To get started, all you have to do is take a 5-minute style quiz and select items from your dynamic, personalized closet. The styles show up at your door in as little as 2 days. And then when you're ready for new clothes, boom, swap them out for more new-to-you styles. I recently rented a pale lime green leather blazer from Alice and Olivia. You may have seen it on our Instagram stories. I am obsessed. It's so perfect if you're like me who doesn't want to spend all that time putting together a look, but also loves looking stylish. Right now, our listeners can give Armoire a try and get up to 50% off their first month. That's up to $125 off. Just visit armoire.style/dateable. That is armoire.style. That's spelled ARMOIRE.style/DATEABLE to get up to 50% off your first month and never worry about what to wear again. Try Armoire today. Hello, friends.
Welcome back to Dateable.
We are happy to have you all back.
Yes.
And maybe our new listeners. Welcome anybody new.
We love new
You're
listeners.
in the right place. We like old too.
Yes, that's true. The OGs that have been with us from the start. We absolutely love watching your journeys unfold too, as you grow, as the podcast grows.
Yes. And it's always great to see where you all are at in your love lives and then in your journey to finding yourself.
Yes.
As woo-woo as that sounds, we love getting those messages of you just uncovering something about yourself, maybe through an episode or through something we posted. Keep sending those in. And this episode in particular will facilitate that as well. It's all about dating intentionally.
Dating intentionally. I feel like this is a word that we use very frequently on the podcast. We had a guest. She has a podcast as well. Her whole podcast is called Dating Intentionally. Her name is Talia Koren. And as soon as we saw her pop up on Instagram and saw her podcast out there, we're like, yes, this person understands us. They have the same feeling about dating. And we're so aligned with so many of her messages. It just made sense to get her on this podcast. And we'll also be a guest on hers.
Listen, a dating podcast is born every second of every day. I mean, seriously, it feels like there's a new dating podcast all the time. But the reason why Talia's podcast really stood out to us was because we were just in agreement on so much. And also, I feel like our journeys have been very similar as well.
Oh, yeah.
In our pursuit of love. We really felt like we found our podcast soulmate. Like, yeah, girl, like we talk about this too. So we thought it was such a great idea to have a conversation with her too.
And then when we had her on the podcast, so we didn't know this, but we actually reached out to her. We're like, hey, would you want to, do a swap and be on each other's podcast? And her response was just like, oh my God, I've been listening to your podcast for so long. It helped shape my dating journey. She talks about this on the episode too. We're just like, oh, this is what we like to see, right? And, her whole thing is like she was single out of a 6-year relationship, really had no idea where to start with dating, was excited about dating. She definitely brings a fresh perspective that you'll all hear in this episode. But her whole thing was like, I want to just learn how to date. And now she's engaged. So clearly it works, whatever she's doing with dating intentionally and what she learned from this podcast and brought to her own podcast. Dating intentionally, it's the way to go.
By the end of this episode, you'll understand how Talia really enjoyed the dating process. She had so much fun and she learned so much along the way. She didn't think it was hard. Like there were challenges, but she thought the challenges were interesting and fascinating. So if you are feeling like you're bogged down by dating or you're burnt out, this is a great episode because you're going to feel so much lighter by the end and you're going to feel like, wow, dating is fun. Dating is a privilege.
It kind of reminds me of the episode we did with Meredith, The Secret to Enjoying Modern Dating. And she just had this air about her also is now in a very happy relationship. So we love seeing this progression. Like it really makes us so happy. And ultimately, we want to just, share people's journeys to inspire your own and, put out different ideas about what it means to date in today's world.
Yeah. It's a fantastic conversation. And I wish I had this when I was dating in my 20s.
Oh my God.
I was definitely not dating intentionally.
No. Absolutely not. I think there's a misnomer too that dating intentionally means that you are dating to find a relationship. And while it can mean that, it doesn't always. So by the end of this episode, you're going to have a really good grasp on what it means to date intentionally. I think this is one of those buzzwords that's thrown around a lot. And sometimes it is hard to, decipher what does this actually mean. We did poll some people on Facebook and Instagram to get their takes of what dating intentionally means. I'm curious though, before we go into some of theirs, Yue, like, what does this mean to you?
Well, now I think dating intentionally means dating with a purpose.
Yeah.
Like you have a purpose behind all of your actions in dating. And that purpose could be, I'm dating to explore myself more.
Yeah.
That could be an intention.
You took my answer. I was going to say the exact same thing. Yes, probably because we've discussed it before.
Oh, wow.
Well, I mean, at the core of it, definition of intentional is on purpose.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
Yeah. It's not what you're looking for. I think that let's just make that distinction. It's like people think they need you to go on a first date and be like, I'm looking for marriage. I'm looking for, like they start listing. That's not an intention.
Yeah.
An intention is what is driving you to date.
So some of the fun ones that we got from Instagram and Facebook. So this was from our moderator, Janice, on Facebook. I recall going out to bars and randomly meeting people and entering into surprise situations. It's the opposite of that.
True.
And then from Michael, it's not swiping right on almost everyone, hoping for at least one response. It's being cognizant of one's own values and beliefs and accepting that someone who matches those characteristics takes effort.
Oh, that's a nice one. I like that.
Yeah, I'll read 2 more. We got a lot, but 2 more. Portia, to consciously date the person I've chosen and provide a safe space for each other as I get to know them and them me. And then last but not least, there were more, but for this page, being guided by your relationship values and not just doing what feels good now.
Oh, yeah.
That's really important because when you're not intentional, you're like, oh, well, I know this person doesn't want a relationship with me, but it'll be fun to see them. And, I can still look for my person, but have a friends with benefits on the side. No big deal.
Yes. You get distracted.
Yeah.
To what your lizard brain wants.
Yeah.
And then you are now misaligned. It actually detracts you from your intention.
Or it's the present bias, like what feels good in the moment. Like you don't think about like what's actually better for you in the future. Like you give more weight to the current feeling and what's going on. Like it'll feel good to meet up with that person.
Yeah. Instant gratification. This is all our society's ever about. It's like, let's just get it. Let's just get it now. Let's feel good. There is something to be said about being present and really valuing the time you spend with someone. But then you also have to balance that with, is this actually taking you off course?
Yeah. I think though for me, the first time I would say I was very intentional about dating was this last time when I met my partner. In the past, I definitely was not. I definitely feel what Janice was saying of just like, I'll just go out and see what happens and see where the night takes me. Like that was like my dating life in my 20s, pretty much.
Yeah.
And then in my 30s too, probably for a bit. And then like this last time around, I was like, okay, this is what I need. This is what I want. This is what I'm going after. And if someone doesn't match that, then they're not the right person for me. Like I feel like I got rejected a lot more in this phase, and then also was able to cut people off earlier because I was intentional about what I was looking for and put it out there for them too to be like, that actually isn't what I'm looking for, instead of like molding myself into like a chameleon being like, I'm just here to have fun, you know?
I think intention is just simply to give yourself a direction. Like even to your example of like going out and then being like, let's see where the night takes me. If you make that your intention, that's great because you're going to have a great fucking time. But if your intention is to find someone to date and explore something serious with, and then you go out and see where the night takes you, then it's a little different. Like they're conflicting. So just, you know, like be intentional about even the casual stuff.
Right. Like your strategy is like for the wrong outcome completely.
Yes.
Like what you're going for. It's not to say that that isn't a wrong outcome, but it is for what you are looking for. It's not intentional to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's also cutting off people. Like the last round of dating, I use this example all the time, and I still have Connor Beaton to thank for it when he gave me a mini therapy session on one of our episodes. But there was this guy that I really liked. Like I remember being like, I think this could be something. This was someone I had met like while I was away and I had never actually met up with, and delusional saying it now. But I remember saying this to you even, Yue. Like I remember I was like, oh, this person, there's something. And he was so into it, and then it just like ended. When I finally got back, we're trying to find a time to meet up. It was like pulling teeth to find a time that worked. And then ultimately I had to be like, is this what I want? Like I want someone that has the time to meet, wants to like prioritize a relationship. It shouldn't be this difficult. And I had to let that person go at that point.
Yeah. And if you were not intentional, you would have just been a sitting duck, like waiting to be picked, waiting for that text, waiting for someone to make plans. And this is what a lot of us end up doing. It's just waiting, seeing who picks us. And then we go, okay, yeah, this could work. But this being intentional puts you in the driver's seat, and you have your lineup, and you go, you've stepped up. You've stepped up. Okay, let's explore these relationships now.
I think that's what my dating life was for so long. I was like, oh, I'm just going to stand here and like see who comes to me. And that's what we're told as women. So it's not like a shade. Like that is actually very much ingrained in a lot of us, especially anyone on the elder millennial side and over. That has been something we've been told. I love how Talia breaks it down in this episode too, of like all the interactions in a dating process. Like it's not just, you know, is someone going to be relationship material or not? Like she was intentional at all the small points too. So this is really helpful for people that kind of like want to see the breadth of what dating intentionally can mean.
Yeah. We do go in depth about setting your dating intentions quite a bit in our Finding Your Person program, which is probably like one of my favorite sections. I still go back to it. It is so much thinking, but it does help you pinpoint your reason, your drive, your motivation with some sort of direction so that you're not just like lost like every other dater out there they're just floating in the dating ether, like, oh, let's see what happens, and let's see what is thrown my way. This way you have some control over such an uncontrollable universe.
I mean, at the core, our whole Finding Your Person program is about dating intentionally.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. We can't guarantee that you'll walk out your door and meet your person the next day in any program. Like, that's just not realistic. But what it does is set you up for that mindset that is in this intentional mode.
Yes.
We really believe dating intentionally is the key to eventually meeting that person. 100%.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
We recently found out that Gen Z is like going back to matchmaking. It's like a thing, like they're getting off the dating apps and going to matchmaking. And I would say, just like for anybody who's thinking about this, like any dating tools that you're thinking about using, don't use them until you're intentional.
Right.
Because I think a lot of people think the tools replace intentionality. Well, let's see who the matchmaker brings me. Let's see what 100%. The apps bring me. You're not going to find what you want because you are not putting out there what it is that you are looking for. So it's very like, for all our Gen Z listeners, if you truly are going to a matchmaker, make sure you're intentional about what is driving you to date.
That is such a good point. Such a good point, because I think people are looking for like the silver bullet of like, where do I go? And just show up and then it'll all fall into place. And that's just not realistic. Okay, Yue, we have something coming out next week. Like, can we share it with people so they can get ready for it next week?
Well, yes. Okay, let's do it. Let's do it. It's not our Finding Your Person program. I know we just talked about it, but we are reopening that program later this year, but we have something else.
So we are super excited to roll out a Meeting IRL Masterclass. So it's not a program, it's a course, so less time involvement, but still the same intentionality we are trying to bring, especially because we hear people loud and clear that they want to get out into the world and meet people again and not be beholden to apps only, but meeting people IRL is hard. It's not that easy nowadays. And it's funny because like we were talking about this, we're like, does this need a masterclass behind it? And we're like, it does, because it comes down to intentionality, right? It comes down to intentionality. Like if you're just like, I'm going to go out and meet people, like you could be literally spending like hours and hours out and about meeting zero people. So we're here to help bring some structure, to bring some intentionality around meeting IRL. And we're so excited about giving this to all of you because we know it's a need.
It is the number one question we get asked all the time. How do I meet people out in the wild? How do I meet people without being on the apps all the time? And this is why we created this course for you all. But also, like, the basis of this course around the intentionality is this alignment. Know that everything that you want to happen in your love life has to come from alignment within yourself, your energy, your actions, your beliefs, your behaviors, all has to be in alignment for you to find what you're looking for. And this course will help just go, like align everything for you to get the result that you're looking for. It's not just going out into the wild and be like, here I am.
Yeah.
Who am I going to meet today?
And what I love about like our courses and programs that we're working to like roll out more and more of these in the year, just hit different pain points for people, quite frankly. But the difference between this versus listening to the podcast is it's personalized. It's custom for you. It's helping you get into the mode of figuring out what works for you. And while we love that everyone listens to the podcast, it's kind of like the level 1 of Dateable, right? It's certainly going to help you 100%. But if you want to take it up a notch, like having this more like hand-holded guidance, like that's really what we're here for.
So you get the audio, you get the exercises, you get some takeaways that you can bring with you before you go out in the wild to meet people. There is just basically a like step by step of how you do this. And it's like Julie said, it's not as much of a time commitment. So you can absolutely finish this course pretty quickly and then start implementing the actions right away.
So this will be available starting next week, open for a week. We'll give more info on the next episode and of course on social media, but just wanted to plant the seed that this is coming. We've been hard at work just trying to make this class structured as useful as possible so we can get you to the good stuff of meeting people.
Yes. So May 29th, etch that into your brain. This is when it's going to open, May 29th.
Okay, cool. So yep, at Dateable Podcast, you can follow us there. That's where you can also stay up to date on what's happening with all of these offerings and then also just fun content. You know, we've been really being a lot more active on Instagram lately. Big Dateable Energy. That's where you can also interact with other Dateable listeners and participate in some of these polls and questions and, you know, really be in it with us.
Come. Join us.
Okay, before we get into it, let's hear a message from our sponsors.
Do you ever wish there was a way to warn people about your ex? I sure wish for that. Or alert others about a creepy date, or find out if your significant other is seeing someone else, or just curious to know what's happening in your local dating scene? Date Detective makes it possible. Date Detective is a brand new app that just launched. They're on a mission to create a safer dating community through the power of information. The app lets you review your dates and share your dating experiences while maintaining your privacy. So how it works is that you post anonymously the information you want to share about your date, and that information is not made public. However, they make it easy to search for and find reviews about someone by using their name, email, phone number, or even their social media username. Date Detective also has community features like groups where you can connect with others or make your own private space with you and your friends. Investigate your next date on Date Detective. Download the app through date-detective.app. Living with ADHD can be a challenge, and dating with ADHD is definitely a challenge, we've heard many of you say. But finding the right care and proper tools needed to succeed can be life-changing. Done is an online ADHD care platform that can get you all the resources you need to help manage your ADHD. Unlock your path to better focus with Done. Take a free 1-minute assessment and book an appointment with a licensed ADHD clinician as soon as the next day. Get continuous care, insurance coverage, and 24/7 care team support and pharmacy copays as low as $0. And because May is Mental Health Awareness Month, you can get 50% off your first consultation. That's just $99. Visit get.donefirst.com/podcast before the end of the month to take advantage of this deal. That's get.donefirst.com/podcast. Done. Turn ADHD into strength.
Okay, let's hear it from Talia.
Intentionality. We hear that word so much. And what does it mean to date intentionally? Do you know, listeners? Can you think of an answer to that? While you think about that, I'm going to introduce our guest because she has an entire podcast called Dating Intentionally. Her name is Talia Koren, host of the podcast Dating Intentionally with the IG account Dating Intentionally, in case you didn't know what she was all about. She's 32 years old, lives in Mountain View, originally from New York City, and she is engaged. Hi, Talia. Welcome to Dateable.
Hello. This is so surreal being on here. I was listening to you guys when I was dating.
Oh.
You were part of my journey, and now I'm here on the podcast. I feel like I graduated.
Oh, my God.
Oh,
no,
my
you have your
God.
MBA
This
now.
makes us so happy. And you are engaged and
Yes.
you've been with your partner now roughly 2 years. Take us back
Almost,
to
yeah.
when you were listening to Dateable and before you met your partner.
Yeah, so I got out of a 6-year relationship at age 29. So that's like context for my dating journey, like my intentional dating journey.
Okay.
And my goal was honestly just to test out everything I had learned in therapy and advice from podcasts like yours. I'm like, okay, I've been listening to this podcast while in a relationship. I was like learning in therapy. I was so excited to date. I grew out of this and I'm a new version of myself and I want to see what's out there. So I went into dating with a very positive attitude, just so excited to meet people and test everything. Like I love learning. I'm a big nerd. I'm a dating nerd. So I wanted to just test everything. And that's kind of how I got started. And I started my Instagram and podcast because I realized how my peers, my friends were not having fun dating. And I'm like, wait a minute, why am I having so much fun and no one else is?
You definitely are the anomaly there.
Yes.
I think part of it is, that situation of like being so excited to date and also being an extrovert, and just generally not caring, like not worrying about being a failure. Failure isn't really in my vocabulary, So I think that cocktail of mindset plus situation made it really fun for me.
And then, I mean, when you're so not tied to the outcome, you can have so much fun dating.
Yeah.
How do you get into the mode of finding a partner?
So I dated for a year. I wanted to be single for a year. Right. That was like my goal, like my minimum single time. And so for the first, like, honestly, the majority, I was not looking for a relationship. I wasn't ready. Then I was like, okay, I feel like I'm ready to give my energy to someone in the way where you need to work on the relationship, because relationships require work, and I think it's okay to acknowledge if you are not emotionally willing to work on a relationship. Like, no, I don't want to make room for your flaws and your quirks and your baggage. Like, I'm good. I was like that for a while. And then I kind of transitioned out of that. And then when I felt ready, I was dating in a more focused way and being more open to slowly building connections and seeing where they would play out instead of like finding reasons to cut it off really quickly.
So I think it's interesting that you said that, like the first year you want to just be single, no relationship. Because when people think of dating intentionally, a lot of times it's like with the goal of having a relationship.
Right.
Do you think dating intentionally can mean like, I just want to be single and not have a relationship? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think your intention can literally be whatever you want. To me, it just means that your actions align with that. So if you are looking to date to be in a relationship, you're probably not going to entertain a friends with benefits. But like, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want. It's just like leveling with yourself. Like, okay, if I go down this path and I start like trying to rope in someone who's not texting me back, is that dating intentionally? No.
Right.
Like, if I'm really trying to make it work with someone who's clearly not showing interest in me, that is chasing a fantasy, at that point.
So your actions align, but I'm guessing you also have to tell the people you're dating that this is your intention. How do you verbalize that?
So when I was not ready for a relationship, I would say that. Like, I'd be like, I'm out here and I'm just looking to meet people. I'm not looking for a relationship. Yeah, I did hook up with a lot of people. I didn't hook up with everyone I went out with, obviously, but like that was part of it. And then when I transitioned out of that, I would be like, yeah, I'm looking for a long-term relationship. And I was not afraid to say that on my profile, sometimes in messaging with someone and sometimes on the first date. A lot of different dating experts say different things on this. I didn't see a difference between saying it in a DM on a dating app versus first date. Yes, people can lie. People can say they want one thing and change their mind. Like, you take it with a grain of salt, but at least I was swiping right mostly on people who said they were looking for a relationship in their profile. And that was my fiance. He said that. That was one of the things he had in his profile. So, yeah.
So when did this shift happen for you? When you were dating to date and then dating to be in a relationship?
Right around that 1 year mark that I was aiming for. I was like, okay, I've done the therapy. I've read the books. I've
listened to the podcast.
I've listened to Dateable. I've listened to Dateable. I've tried to make a friendship with my ex and it didn't work out. Like, I did all the things, and I felt like, okay, I think I am ready to work on it with someone. And I was mentally ready to be single for like years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was mentally cool about that. Like, I wasn't frantically looking to get into a relationship before I was 30 and like the timeline. Like, I was ready to let it play out and trust the timing. I think a lot of us struggle with that, right? It's like, wait, I'm 32. I should have been pregnant by now. Like, whatever it is, and sometimes like we just don't have control over everything. So I was ready to I'm still honestly like I'm engaged, but I know it could not work out in the end. Like, I might be dating again one day for whatever reason.
Right.
Like,
it's just realistic.
It's just that's part of it. Like, it's just something to accept.
Or you got to date your husband, even in a marriage.
Yeah, I'm going to date my husband. But like, I don't know, my family, both my parents are divorced. My dad had a partner for 10 years after the divorce who died. He's 63 and he's on the apps. Right. Like, that's life.
Wow, you're so realistic about it all.
I know, I'm really pragmatic.
It's good. It's good, right? Because then you don't romanticize the whole experience.
No.
In the year that you were single and dating, did you meet anybody that you thought, I actually would want to be in a relationship with this person, but I can't?
Yeah, actually, I did have a rebound. So I did, in that year, I actually did like get into a 2-monther with someone, but he ended up being an alcoholic. And he has since been sober. Like, he actually, like, from that, like, I ended it with him and I think he like started going to AA and stuff, which is like amazing.
Great. Good.
So I had that experience. That was my rebound, I guess. And then, I did meet plenty of very, I guess, like, they're good candidates, but I wasn't ready. So I It's like catch and release.
Yeah.
And then there was a guy I met before my fiance that I really, really, really liked. There were two actually. And the first one, it didn't work out because he like discovered my Instagram and did not like it.
What?
It was actually, I should have told him earlier, like obviously, but one of my followers found him on Instagram and like screenshot the positive things I was saying about him, sent it to him, and he ended it. Fair. I should have told him. And then the second guy I really liked, who really was a good match for me, he had just gotten out of a 10-year relationship. And I was thinking, you know what? If I was his friend, I would tell him not to date me. Like I was ready to be in a relationship. So that just didn't align. And he was like, yeah, I want to be single for Burning Man. I'm like, you know what? Like, you do you.
Yeah.
I invited him to like come back. I was like, look, if you want to pick this up again, like the door's open. But by the time he did come back, and he did, I was already dating my now fiance. So yeah.
I mean, obviously we're now talking years later, but you seem so like optimistic and vibrant, like about the experience. And I can hear listeners just being like, how do I get there? You know, like that is not the vibe I have. Like, I guess what are some of your tips on that?
Yeah. The biggest thing, and this is what I learned in therapy, is to release all expectations. Like I never went into a date expecting, are they going to be the one? Are we going to have chemistry? Are we going to kiss? It's like literally who knows what's going to happen? Maybe nothing will happen, like literally nothing. So that was the most helpful thing. Just like, can I show up to this date and have an enjoyable conversation, an enjoyable beverage or whatever we're doing, and then go home? And that's kind of the expectation of that experience. And then decide if I want another date, and then rinse and repeat. That was it. I wasn't sitting across from my date thinking, oh, he said he has a bad relationship with his mom. Like, oh, bad news. Like it's just something like projecting all these things that I think people do.
Yeah.
I think we are so preoccupied with the future and all these future problems that just don't even exist yet, that it's hard to enjoy dating when your mind is swirling with like, well, what's going to happen when he finds out this? What's going to happen if she tells me this? It's like, just be in the moment.
Well, I think that's something with dating intentionally that I know we're obviously huge proponents of dating intentionally. That's pretty much what Dateable's about too. But I think people often misconstrue dating intentionally with being focused on the outcome.
Yeah. Right.
And I mean, my personal take is you can still be like, I want a relationship, but not be attached to the person that you just went on a date with being that person. Like, how else would you differentiate between those two?
So the intentionally part really comes from like, after you've gone on a few dates with someone, you can see how they're showing up. And instead of trying to change them or project something onto them, you're seeing them for who they actually are and how they're treating you. And then you decide if you are aligned and if that is the way you want to be treated. We don't have to teach people how to treat us in a way. Like they're going to treat you whatever they think is appropriate and acceptable. And you get to decide if that's a good place to start. So that's kind of where the intentionally part comes from. It's like you have to notice their behavior and how they're treating you, and then you decide if that's for you or not.
There's just like this laissez-faire vibe about you, like when you talk about dating. And I feel like, does anything bother you? Because, everybody has their like one thing that really bothers them in dating. Like for me, it was waiting for the text back. That was like, that got me all the time. So was there anything that really bothered you?
I mean, yeah, like when I like someone, I'm not immune to like the feelings of when you like someone and you're waiting for the text back. But it's like with all this repetition, like I went out with over 60 people. I went on like 180 something dates. So with this repetition, it was like, it just became predictable.
In what time period was that? The year?
Like 10 months.
Okay.
Yeah. Including like when I met my fiance and like we had a couple of dates. I stopped counting after 7 days with him. I think that was like when we officially got into like a relationship kind of. It's a little more complicated than that, but basically. Anyway, I had all those emotions too, but it's like I learned how to observe rather than just react. It's like, okay, like, oh, this person's triggering my anxiety right now. Interesting. What's going on here? I don't have to like protest or like send a text or just kind of post on my stories and hope he sees it, like kind of thing. It's just like, okay, I'm having some anxiety about this. Maybe I should go take a walk. Maybe I should call my friend. Maybe if this keeps happening, they're not the right person for me. Because my fiance didn't trigger my anxiety at all. Not until we were in a relationship, and then it's totally different, right? That's a different
anxiety. I get it. Yeah.
I was like, oh, early dating, I got this.
Right.
But being in a relationship, no, it's a mess.
I know you've talked about before how like one thing that you changed was sleeping with people like early on in the process. Yes.
Yes.
Tell our listeners your thought process there and what that meant for you.
Yeah. So in my story, like I got into a relationship at 23 and then out of that relationship at 29. And I was still dating like a 23-year-old when I got out of that relationship. And part of it was sleeping with people too early. And I did that, I think, a lot because I wanted to get them to like me. That was the goal. It was like, oh, if I sleep with them, like they're going to see how amazing I am in the sack or something. Like, I don't know, that kind of immature thinking. And then I realized that wasn't leading me to the result I wanted. It didn't feel good. It wasn't giving me the connection I wanted. And then later when I was dating more to find a long-term partner, I learned that I was the one who started pulling away after sex for some reason. So I was like, okay, if I want to have a connection with these people I'm meeting, maybe I need to pump the brakes, even if I feel ready to have sex with them, because I need to have more of an emotional connection first so that I don't feel turned off after sex, basically. And I know that's not the norm for most heterosexual women. I'm bi, but like with dating mostly men. And so I had learned that about myself. So that's why I waited. And this is another thing with dating intentionally. Like you have to know your patterns, right? I took notes on everything. What are your patterns? What behaviors do you keep repeating that lead you to the same result? And what can you change? So this is one thing I changed.
I love that you couched that in your own experience because we often get this question, when is too early? When is too late? Shouldn't you have sex with them on the first or second date? Like the way you're talking about this is you found a way that works for you, knowing who you are.
Yeah.
And you've explored a lot of strategies around dating. Our listeners love dating strategies. What are some of the strategies that worked for you, and what are some, like, also tell us some of the disaster ones?
Yeah. So what really worked was I used dating apps mostly. I met people in person too. I never got to go to any speed dating events because it was still like the tail end of COVID. So that was annoying. I wish I had been able to go, but I did not get to go. So yeah, dating apps. One thing that really worked for me was swiping on mediocre profiles. I know that sounds bad. It sounds like you're
we say that all the time.
Yeah.
We say that all the time.
I'm sorry, but like my fiance had a profile that was very bland, but he's also like one of the funniest people I've ever met. Exactly. And it didn't come through in his profile.
My partner,
but like,
same.
Yeah.
It's the hidden gems out there.
Yes. Treasure hunt.
That was a really big one for me. If you're on the fence, just swipe right. Just heart the profile because all it leads to is a conversation. It's not a marriage proposal. You don't have to commit to anything.
Right.
You can even ditch it after the first message if they're weird.
Yeah.
So you just have a conversation. And this is weird, but I only went out with guys that I liked first. I know that doesn't really sound great if you're a guy listening. Because a lot of guys did like me and I just did not go out with them. And I don't know why. Like that was the thing for me. But I liked a lot of guys' profiles. I think women should be liking more profiles because guys rarely get liked. And it's so
proactive.
sad.
Yeah.
Yes. Like I got to choose the ones I wanted to meet. I didn't have to just choose from a limited pool of people who were coming to me. Like, yeah, I didn't have just inbound leads. You know, I did outreach. So sorry to get all marketing on you. But so that was another thing I did that really worked for me was just being the chooser, choosing people I wanted to meet, getting off the apps quickly. I didn't wait for people to ask me out. I asked them out. I don't care. The point is to get to the date, people.
Yes.
Like enough with the like, oh, he didn't, just like ask them out. Just say you want to meet for coffee or just say, I think we should meet and then let them plan it. Fine.
Yeah. I would always just be like, it's so hard to talk on this app. What's your number? You know, just something to move it off.
Yes. Yeah. I would just be
100%.
like, my line was like, oh, that's a really good question to answer in person.
Yeah.
It's great.
Whatever it was. They usually ask them like my work and I'm like, you know what? This is more fun to talk about in person.
And then you meet in person and you're like, I don't want to talk about work.
I feel like you're like one of the first people that I've met that used apps similar to how I did. Like a lot of time, like I was very similar to you of just like putting it out there, moving it along. And like a lot of the guys that I dated were like, oh, this doesn't really happen that often. Like I really liked how things moved along. Did you get similar feedback also?
Yes, definitely. I mean, also I had a very high conversion rate on my messages and dates. Like, yeah, it was easy for me to get dates. Unfortunately, I have a graveyard of like texts I never responded to of like people I traded numbers with and I just never got to them, which was not great. But basically my rule was to never have more than 3 people at once that I was talking to. I tested more, I tested less, but for me, 3 was the magic number. So if I was actively texting and meeting with 3 people, I would not use the apps. And then I would, if one guy, you know, ended for some reason, then I'd go back and like find someone else. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Well, that makes sense because it's like hard to balance, especially if you're trying to date intentionally, right? Is you want to give people the attention and effort that they deserve too.
It took me a while to get there though. Like it took me a while to figure that out. Like there were times where I had to send like 5 texts of like, I don't want to see you anymore. You know? Yeah, like, you know, in like a day. So don't be like that, please. It's not worth it.
A lot of people are hesitant to like, first of all, use apps, but also to like do it this intentionally and maybe like proactively because it feels like a lot of work. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, it is work. I'm on my phone all the time. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, I'm on my phone a lot. And it was not that hard for me to stay in touch. Like, I talk to hundreds of people a day on social media, like on my page. In my prior business, I had a similar thing. So I would say at minimum 15, 20 minutes a day, maybe like a little bit before work and a little after work, especially if you're just watching TV on the couch. It's like really easy time to pop open the app and just respond to messages and match with people.
Responding is actually the harder part.
Yeah, that's the harder
all
part
of this.
Yep.
Yeah, I think there's this misconception. It's the messaging. No, it's actually responding to the messaging.
Yes. That's why you have to get off the apps quickly though, because it's really draining to keep up that conversation. Like you don't need more than 10, 20 messages total between you and someone else to figure out if you can talk about like 3 things on your date.
Right. We always say that too. You just need to like establish a baseline and go out there.
And look, I went on a lot of dates that really I could have done more screening, right? Yeah. Like I ended up with dates with people who were really religious. I'm not. People who were like about to move to a different state and they're just like, okay, I'm not really looking for long distance, like kind of thing. So I could have done more time screening for sure.
What I'm hearing though from you is this was like the first time really dating in your adult life. Is that accurate? Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe a big difference to other people that maybe have been doing this for a while and feel burnt out. But what I love about this is that you have this like beginner's mindset and just like, you just want to take it on. Like there's this energy of just enthusiasm.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, look, I was stuck in this relationship for so long with my ex that I knew was wrong for me. And I just was yearning to give myself another chance, which is hard at 29 after you've been with someone for a long time. Yeah. Like you're thinking it's it, right? That's going to be the one. And then you realize, oh, this actually is not what I want at all. So I was fired up. I knew, I was like, I know what I need now. And with that information, it made dating a lot easier versus just kind of like trying to be picked by someone.
Yeah. I think that's important though to call out though, because so many times we think that like the relationship is the end goal and dating is a means to the end, where you were kind of like, this actually isn't the end I want. And this seems like the part that's going to like, you know, get me all juiced up and ready to go. So like, I think it's a good perspective shift for people that like maybe the outcome isn't always the destination if it isn't right ultimately.
Yeah. Like I'd rather people be alone than in the wrong relationship.
Oh, yeah.
A relationship can be very lonely if you are disconnected, if you're not aligned, if you're not compatible. So I always say it's the same grass. The grass is not greener. It's the same grass.
Yeah, it's just different dogs peeing on it. When you talk about, and so when people think about dating intentionally, they think about the end intention. But what I'm hearing from your strategy is that you had an intention for every step of the way. So maybe you can walk us through that. What was your intention when you were swiping?
Okay. When I was swiping, I really was just looking to see if I could have a conversation with someone. Like if I read a profile, it was like, what can we talk about and connect on for like 30 minutes?
Yeah.
You know, so with my fiance, like I responded to one of his prompts that mentioned he likes audiobooks. So I was like, what are you reading? And we talked about books for a while in our messages, and that was pretty much enough. Like, okay, cool. He reads. Like, that's kind of all I need to know.
He can read good. Yeah, exactly. And then you go on to the messaging part. What's the intention there? Get off the apps.
First is, are they normal? Like, if they're saying anything sexual, if they're being rude. Like, people were weird about my job. At the time, I was like a cookbook author and I had a whole meal prep business. Very different. So people were weird about that, whatever. Then they're just automatically no.
Interesting.
Yeah, I know.
Weird how?
You would never think that people would be weird about a meal prep business.
Yes. People will just if they're like, oh, you're a food blogger, like, I hate food blogs because they're so hard to read kind of thing. Like,
wow.
Oh, putting down your career and ambition, and that's a huge turnoff.
Right. Exactly. Like, okay, bye. Or if they're just, one guy sent me like a really weird playlist, which is just a funny story. Like he just sent a like overly sexual playlist to me. He's like, I have a playlist. Like he's just sending this to all these girls probably.
Yeah, I was like, he definitely said that to everyone.
Is that the new dick pic? Is a sexual playlist?
I don't know. It's bad. I mean, I'd rather have that than a dick pic. So
yeah, true. Same.
You know, so yeah, I just like, are you normal? Can you carry a conversation? Is talking to you fun? Is talking to you easy? Because I do believe that if it feels forced on the apps, it's not really going to be fun in person.
Yes.
So if there is some ease to the conversation, that's a great sign. And then you can move it to arranging a date, which hopefully is also should not take longer than like 4 messages. Just a time, a place, a date. That's it.
The next intention of the next stage.
Yeah.
And then you get to the date, the first date. What's the intention of the first date?
To figure out if you want a second date.
Oh,
that's it.
Simple.
Am I curious about you? It's like, am I going to run into any deal breakers? I did run into deal breakers on the first date. Like traveling is a big thing for me. So I had a first date with a guy who said he doesn't have a passport. I'm like, okay, you're out. He also said that he doesn't have any interest in traveling outside the country. And I'm just like,
yeah,
we're not going to get along. Like that's just not me. So running into deal breakers.
Right.
Do we have a good back and forth? I was not looking for attraction. I was not looking for sparks on first date. And that was like more towards the end once I figured out that you don't need it to be there on the first date, because it's probably first dates are a performance. Like first days are just like people just have like a monologue about themselves. Like we're just doing our performance at each other the whole time.
And scene.
Yeah, exactly.
What I really like though about what you're saying is everything is so bite-sized. It's not like getting ahead of yourself in any way. It's really taking every interaction at the face value for what it is. Like you're never going to know on a first date if this is your forever person. It's impossible to know that.
That's why I say also keep first dates short. There are experts out there who've been doing this for a lot longer than me, have said like, no, like leave it open-ended, go for it. I'm like, I don't know. I personally like a short first date. Yeah.
Or at least have a way to get out.
Yeah. I've been trapped on some bad dinners. Trust me.
Yes.
I mean, look, my first quote unquote date with my fiance was a virtual date because he had not yet moved to my city, but he had an apartment and a job in the city. So I knew he was like definitely moving. Otherwise I would not have entertained that.
So what I'm hearing also from you is like you had a pretty clear list of like things that were like deal breakers to you, but you also weren't so rigid either. How did you kind of strike that balance, and how did you actually figure out what those were for you?
Yeah, so I actually have a course on this. It's called How to Identify Your Needs. And so it's like a very short self-guided course. It took me 5 years in the wrong relationship to figure it out. I hope it takes you a lot less time. Yeah. But yeah, I did figure out kind of like, what do I need in a relationship to thrive? It's a list of 5 things that are just mine, right? Everyone has their own. And these are things that are really specific to the lifestyle that I want to have, like traveling. They're not like general things like empathy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's things we all need that should not be on this list.
The basics.
Yes, the basics don't need to be on your list. Like they're just the basics. So I did find ways to bring up certain things in conversation. Travel was an easy one. Also like career stuff and ambition is a big thing for me. So because I'm really ambitious. So I wanted to be with someone who could match that energy, but I wasn't looking for 100%. I'm happy with 80%.
Yeah.
I wasn't looking for someone who could check. I mean, I would say I have 5 needs, but we can call them boxes. I wasn't looking for someone who could even check all 5. I was ready. If they could check 3 easily, I would be happy.
Okay.
Like, you know, that was kind of my being realistic. Like there's no one out there who's gonna be perfect. So I found the 80% person and I knew when to stop looking. That's the other part. Like, it's like, I know what I'm looking for and I stopped looking.
So what were your 5 outside of travel, career?
Yeah. The other 2. So this one's really important, but I need them to be the person who I want to be around when I get good news and bad news.
Yes.
That's really, it kind of is empathy, but it's like really specific to especially the good news, right? Like, what are they like? Open to self-improvement was another one. And because I made this list like before I learned a lot about dating, I did have like the basics on my list. So that is the 5th one, which if I had to revise the list, I would take that off and just make it the 4. But I was looking for trust, companionship, respect, all those like very key ingredients in a relationship too. So look, this sounds not great, but I would test my dates on certain things or in a way that was authentic. Like if I had really good news to share, I would share that on a date and I would see how they respond. Or if I had really bad news.
I don't think that's testing.
I wasn't making up things.
That's not testing.
It's a data point though. Like you're seeing how they react because that's important to you.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, I always think about this. It's like how much, because I similar thing. It's like I realized certain needs for me, like consistency was my big one because my ex prior was everything but consistent. So much of it is driven by your past. Yeah. How do you like realize, you know, what you don't know almost? Because I think even now for me, like, I'm like, oh, I'm learning new things that I need that I didn't even realize I needed. Or is that just part of the process? Like that's to be expected.
I really think it's part of the process. Like the more I get into the world of dating coaching and like just learning about this, the more I realize we can talk about this all day long, but you're probably going to learn listener through doing it. You're going to learn through the pain. You're going to learn through making mistakes more than anything else. And that's okay. I think it's like we should accept it instead of avoiding it.
Yeah.
You know, like being able to anticipate, expect it is going to be more realistic.
Yeah.
It's also like needs aren't one and done either. Like they come up
they
throughout a
change.
relationship. Yeah. And like part of, I'm assuming dating intentionally, at least in my opinion, it doesn't stop once you're done dating. When you're in a relationship, you're obviously intentional in different ways.
Yes, for sure. My fiance and I, we have like bi-weekly check-ins. We talk about this stuff all the time. It's not just because I'm a dating coach. It's definitely, a topic we discuss for sure.
I feel like before I was in a serious relationship, I was like, I do not understand why people need to do check-ins. That's so lame. And now I'm like, nope, get it.
Yeah, it's been a game changer.
So back to the 5 boxes, because I love that. I like that you said just checking like 3. Like basically checking more than 50% would be enough because it's always going to evolve. And I had this conversation with a new girlfriend the other day. She's been married for 8 years and she's like, my box is evolving now. And she's realizing that some of these needs are going to be outsourced to a friend. Like, for example, spirituality for her. She's like, I realize it's a need of mine that's evolved throughout the years. I don't need my partner to be on the same level, but I have these amazing girlfriends who are in the same level. So like, how do you deal with that? Like the evolution of what you're looking for in a partner?
I have a similar experience. Like, I thought I needed this sounds silly. I thought I needed someone who could go skiing with me because it's a huge part of my life. But then I realized, I can actually go with friends. I don't need my partner to do this. I can go by myself, which is even more fun. I think really examining your list. I think you can start with a big list of all the things. Like, don't even judge yourself. Write the 6 foot tall, write the fancy job, whatever it is. And then really look at it and be like, okay, if I don't have this, could I still be happy? If I don't have this, could I still be happy? Like for each one. And it's like, okay, also a question could be, if my partner didn't have this, where else could I meet this need? Yeah. And I think that even for mine, like I can travel with my friends. I think it's crazy to believe that your partner is supposed to meet all of your social needs. That's impossible. No one person can meet 100% of your needs anyway. So I worked a lot on meeting my own, right, in my single journey. And that also has been very helpful for me now in my relationships. Like, okay, my partner won't be available to meet my needs all the time either. Because that's just life. Right. So if he's unavailable, what can I do? And that's really freeing. It's like takes the pressure off.
That's a really good distinction because I think so often we think that like we need to find someone that meets our needs in a partner. I do believe that to some degree. Like especially, I think it also depends what needs are we talking about. Is it like, oh, they're unreliable and not trustworthy? Like that's pretty core to like them meeting your needs. But if it's something like, oh, I can go skiing with someone. Like, what is the line of what's like kind of, deal breakers, I guess, in terms of someone meeting the needs versus being able to do it yourself or outsource it or whatever?
One way I look at it is like thinking about what you need to have a successful friendship with someone. That's kind of at the baseline of all relationships, right? Is like a sense of friendship, connection. So you start there and it's like, okay, what do you need there? You need trust, you need respect, you need understanding and like you just, you need all those things. Then what's on top of that for a romantic relationship? Well, you need attraction. You need maybe there's a little bit more like nurturing and caring happening. There's more enmeshment happening. And I think I know like interdependence is a good thing. We're not talking about codependence, but like interdependence is what you're looking for. So all these things need to be there for the relationship just to exist. So I think like that is not asking for too much. Like you wanting consistency is not asking for too much at all.
You can't have a relationship without it, basically.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of where my distinction is.
I want to dive into this even more, but before we do, let's take a quick break to hear from our partners.
This episode is sponsored by 310 Nutrition. Okay, be honest. How good are you at hydrating? I personally have a tracker, which constantly reminds me that I am not hydrating enough. But now I rely on 310 Nutrition for everything from water hydrators, which make your water delicious and nutritious, to refreshingly healthy lemonade mixes, and they're all in one shakes. Whatever your personal goals may be, from getting hydrated to healthier habits, 310 Nutrition is satisfying, guilt-free, and a helpful tool to whatever goals you have for your health. And we just just got these great products from them as a sponsor of the show. And I was immediately drawn to the lemonade mixes because one, they have no sugar, and two, how refreshing does this sound? My favorite is the blackberry flavored lemonade, which is such a treat. Right now, 310 is celebrating a new year of goals with the code DATEABLE and giving our listeners 50% off, up to $100 off your first order. With so many sample packs, new products, it's really fun and easy to put together an order or start a subscription on products you know you'll use. Go to 310nutrition.com and use the code DATEABLE right now for 50% up to $100 for your first order. That's 310nutrition.com and use the code DATEABLE.
Spring is in the air, and you know what adds an extra spring to my step? Our partners at Via Hemp. Need to chill out after a long day? There's a Via gummy for that. Dealing with anxiety or stress? There's a gummy for that too. Want to set the mood in the bedroom? There's a gummy for that called High Love. Via also carries a wide array of other gummies with and without THC, ranging from 0 to 100 milligrams. I've been struggling to stay focused lately, so I was excited to try out their Flow State gummies. These felt like a good bet to me too, because they were non-psychoactive and THC free. But they definitely delivered, boosting my daily energy and focus. So whether you're a 2 milligram or a 50 milligram user, you can shop through their website for any strength and effects. So head to Via Hemp and use the code DATEABLE to receive 15% off and one free sample of their award-winning gummies. 21 plus. That's VIIA hemp.com and use the code DATEABLE at checkout. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. Take your passion and pleasure to a whole new level with High Love from Via Hemp. If you love Dateable, we have a podcast you have to check out. Seeing Other People was created to help you feel less alone and more empowered by your dating life. Hosted by your soon-to-be favorite internet big sis, Alana Dunn, an early Hinge employee, modern dater, and now a fiance, is here to guide you through whatever you're going through. And she covers the gamut of topics from anti-dating rules, how she went from being an anxious dater to in a secure, healthy relationship, and navigating dating burnout. On Tuesdays, Alana brings on expert guests like dating coaches, matchmakers, psychologists, and more. And on Thursdays, Alana is joined by anonymous real-life daters who bear it all and open up about what they faced in their love lives and what they wish they knew going through it. Seeing Other People will help you change your dating mindset, develop healthy dating habits, and make you feel like you actually can find what you're looking for. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and tune in every Tuesday and Thursday.
Do you think your partner should be your first call for everything?
No.
No.
Not necessarily. I think there are some things that happen in my day to day that like he doesn't care as much about, but my friend will like pump me up.
Yeah.
You know?
I feel like my instinct was to say yes. But now that I'm like thinking about it, it depends what it is. Like I think for big life moments, like it is important for me personally to have someone that can be my go-to person. But yeah, like you, like I probably text you before my partner on other certain things all the time.
Yeah, I agree. I think in a healthy relationship, part of that is having other relationships.
Yes.
Yeah, not romantic. But you don't even like whatever, just family, friends, just you have other outlets.
Like I texted you about a reality show and my partner did not give a shit about it. But you,
All right,
you met with me with excitement.
Yes, but if you call me about that, I would not be picking up that call. So
fair enough.
But I think this is all for people to think about when you're talking about dating intentionally. What is it that you absolutely need from a partner?
Yeah.
And how does your partner fit into your lifestyle? I mean, like the book that's all the rage right now, The Other Significant Others. It's like, do you want a relationship where your significant other is the person in your life, or is he or she one of the important people in your life? It's also important to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like when the more you get clear on this stuff, the easier dating will be for you in a way. It might be harder to find someone who meets all these things that you're thinking about, but you will get to the no faster with a lot of people, which is how I approached it. It was like, just get to the, oh, this isn't going to work sooner instead of like going down the situationship rabbit hole.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, I love what you said, Talia, about like 80%. 3 out of 5 needs to check. And you started going here of like, I knew when to stop. Take us through that. How? Because I think a lot of people struggle with this.
So when I met my fiance, I had in that week, so I was coming off of the guy I told you earlier about who like found my Instagram.
Yes.
He like dumped me. So then we were exclusive at that point. Like I wasn't seeing anyone else. So I got back on the apps, and the week I met my fiance I had 7 first dates. Like I went hard.
Whoa.
Like, don't do this, people. Please don't do this. But he was a virtual date. So I actually put him right before like an in-person date. So I was already ready, like makeup, hair. And
smart.
I just, I was like,
So
I have
efficient.
to go. Yeah, I was like, I have to go now. And I just like went on a date. He knows all this stuff. Like, he is chill about all this stuff. Anyway, so of those 7 people, like I was dating that guy who I told you about the Burning Man 10-year relationship. Like he was in that little cohort. So I was seeing him while also getting to know my fiance. And like I wasn't sitting there thinking like, who's it going to be? Maybe none of them. It was like maybe none of them would end up being the one. I wasn't even looking for the one. It ended up being like my fiance was quietly persistent. That's how I describe him. We were not physically together the first month. So we had 4 virtual dates in the month after we matched before he moved to my city. So I think that was like just a green flag of like, okay, this person is showing me they're emotionally available, because like we weren't texting a lot, and I felt bad because I kind of left him on red for a few days because he wasn't there. I was like, I don't know why you're texting me. To be honest. And so I think just seeing him show up every few days, like, okay, this person's not freaking out that I'm not really texting him back. Like he's emotionally available. And then as we got to know each other, he was a very slow burn. He makes a lot of jokes, right? He uses humor a lot. So it was hard to get to know him, but I gave it time, and we didn't click until our 3rd date. Like that's when I would say I felt the quote unquote spark. So I gave it
in person or on virtual?
In person. Okay. So at that point, that was 7 dates total.
Okay.
So on our 3rd date in person, that's when I was like, oh my God, I actually am attracted to this person. I actually like this person. And then by our 7th in-person date, I was not seeing anyone else. And I just trusted. Honestly, the short answer to your question, sorry, it took me so long to get here, is that I did not see any red flags. There were just none.
Yeah.
And that's when I knew, I was like, okay, like I don't see any reason to cut this one off.
Yeah. And you enjoyed being with him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a person who is persistent, who is reliable, who is consistent.
Yeah.
And then also doesn't show any of the red flags. That ends up being your person.
But here's the thing, like someone who I thought had red flags might be that person to someone else. You know what I mean? Like that's why I always say in dating, like rejection is not really about you. Like if you get rejected, it's really about their preferences and what they're looking for. You don't have to adjust yourself to the preferences of someone who doesn't even want to date you.
Right. So true.
Like, I'm totally on the same page as you of being like, okay, you found something good. I think like after you've been dating for a while, you kind of realize this, that like someone's never going to be perfect.
Right.
But how do you get to that? Because I could also see someone being like, well, they don't have this. They don't have this. Should I keep going? Are they the right person for me? Like second guessing it a lot. This
is why I always say let things play out. Like you can't know at a certain point, like in this case where I couldn't find any reason to not see him, to not keep seeing him. It's like, okay, well, am I going to self-sabotage this? Like, what am I doing? It's back to the intentional. It's like, well, I want a relationship. Here's this guy who also wants a relationship. I get along with, we're compatible. We both want to eventually get married. We have fun together. Like it's all green lights here.
Right.
So if I was hesitating, then that's more of a sign in me. There's still something I need to pay attention to and tend to and heal. And look, when we became official, like he on our 4th in-person date was like, I want you to be my girlfriend. And I was like, I'm not really there yet, but okay, like great, you know? And it took a couple more dates for me to be like, okay, fine. But I was scared. Like I cried. I was really scared to make that leap from literally going on this dating journey after everything I'd been through to being like, okay, I'm going to focus on this one person. I'm actually going to work on it. I'm going to do my best and communicate and like do all the things you do when you're in a relationship, all the hard parts, right? That's what I was scared of. So that's when I started getting triggered. That's when I started getting more anxiety.
Oh, the cold feet. Really?
And that's probably because you had been in a relationship before that, you know, you didn't have that. It all comes back to your own experience. I could see someone that's been dating for a while, maybe getting triggered in the early dating because that's what is uncomfortable and painful.
True.
What would you say to someone who is still waiting for that moment to click, who maybe have gone on a few dates with this person, all green flags, nothing, like no deal breakers, just things just haven't clicked for them to go,
I mean, I think one important thing to do is what I call a dynamic date, which is like a date where you're doing an activity, not just sitting and talking. Because sometimes when you see someone in a new light or a new environment, it might help you see them in a different way and maybe spark some attraction. But you can't force it. So I think after like 3 or 4 dates, if you're still not feeling it, and if you can't even like, if you don't even want to imagine kissing them, it's a no. Like it's just, and you can't force it. Like on our second date, he went for the first kiss. Like we didn't kiss on our first date. And I was like, I wasn't super happy about that, but I was like, I'm just going to go with this. Like, I was like, oh, okay, it's happening. And it actually was much better than I thought it would be.
Oh, like you kind of need to dive in a little.
Yeah.
And, like try it. Yeah.
Yes. I need to be like, okay, no, like I've had many first kisses at this point. Like, okay, like what's one more? You know?
Well, I think that's like sometimes I was talking to a friend about this and she was like debating, should I be exclusive with this person? And my take was like, look, you're not marrying the person by being exclusive.
No.
If you really want a relationship, if that's what you say you want, and again, everything's checking out, try it because that's the only way you're going to learn if this person is good for you or not.
Yeah, you can end it. You can walk away from a relationship. That is always an option. Always.
People don't think that though, for whatever reason. I feel like everyone like needs all the boxes to be checked. Like, why do you think that's the case?
I think it's a sense of security. And I think that's something I worked on in my journey is giving myself that sense of security of like not needing to be in a couple with someone to feel secure. Look, it does give you a sense of security. Being in a relationship definitely provides a sense of that. So like, I think people really want that. And then once they have it, it's like also like think about people who've been dating for so long. It's like, it never happens. So it feels very scarce. And then that's why I think people want to stay. I think that's why people want to rush to these milestones too. They're thinking about exclusivity or defining a relationship on like date 4. And it's like, you've spent maybe 15 hours with that person.
Yeah.
Like,
I want to hear about like how you're intentionally in a relationship, but there's one thing that we touched on before about attraction. And I could hear people being like, okay, well, what's the line? Like when I'm blatantly not attracted to them at all versus there's not the spark. How did you kind of differentiate?
Right. I mean, I definitely did try to like be in a relationship with someone along my way who I was not super attracted to. And it just doesn't feel good. No. Like I definitely had the ick with that person because he kept making Borat jokes and not unironically.
Oof.
Not ironically. Yeah. He was like unironically. Yeah. So I just like, I'm like, you know what? I don't know. This is really giving me the ick. And he was a really sweet guy, like so nice. But I really just wasn't attracted to him. And I'm sure he has been scooped up by now, like, you know, but I also just wanted to keep dating. So I just would say like, you have to really be honest with yourself and don't force it. Everyone deserves someone who is attracted to them and you deserve to be attracted to whoever you're with. So for me, like I always describe this moment with my fiance where like we were waiting outside in line for a comedy show and I just liked how he was looking at me. Like he was leaning against the wall and I'm like kind of standing in front of him and it just felt, there was a vibe. And I'm like, okay. Then we had this great experience at this insane show where like insane things happened because the audience was crazy. Like just one of those shows. And then at the end, we like made out in his car. After that, I was like, okay, I have a crush. Yeah. Crush secured. But I was ready to call it off after that third date if I wasn't going to feel that.
Right. And you didn't try to force it either.
No,
I mean, you just went with whatever felt good. And going back to to that guy with the Borat jokes, think about this. You being like, oh, that was such an ick for me. I couldn't be attracted to him. His now girlfriend, wife, fiance, whatever, is probably like, oh, he had me at a Borat joke.
Yeah.
Like I fell in love.
Yeah, definitely.
Like quoting it back.
And we have to keep thinking that it's just because it doesn't work for you.
Yeah.
It probably is a reason for someone else to fall in love with this person, but also a great reason for you to set them free. So this Borat lover can just find him.
Yeah. And he shouldn't stop making Borat jokes.
Right.
He should keep
No,
going.
I didn't say that's why. I did like tell him. I didn't react in any way that would, you know, just to me, I just being like, you know what? I'm not into it. And that's okay. Sometimes you can't pinpoint it. Like maybe it wasn't even that, like maybe it was something else, but it's okay if you can't pinpoint it. It's just best to not force it. But it's also good to be open-minded. So if you don't feel the spark on the first date, but you had a good time, please don't write people off.
Yeah. I mean, our listeners always want like the time, the exact time that you should know. And we get that there's not like a single time. I mean, I personally think like if similar to what you're saying, it's like if you have a good enough time or you find them attractive enough, it sounds like settling when you say that, but I really believe that like that's all you need in the first date.
Look, my fiance, like we are very into each other, but like I've been more attracted to other people and I've had crazier sex with other people and all this stuff. Like it's not, you don't need that level.
No. No.
What I want is like a long, sustainable relationship with someone who I'm really emotionally connected to, who I'm friends with, and obviously, yeah, have a great sex life with too. But we're not having sex all the time. Like that doesn't matter as much. You know?
Yes.
Right. I think there's also a difference of like feeling good enough or attracted enough on date 1 versus like 5 dates in. Like that's different too.
Yes.
Well, I think women especially need to feel trust, to feel true attraction. Like I always say, there's a difference between finding someone attractive and being attracted.
Yes.
Like I could find a guy in a supermarket attractive, but if I start talking to him and he is an asshole, I will not be attracted to him. Like,
100%.
You know? So like feeling immediate sexual desire for someone is not common. And it can change as you get to know them.
Yeah.
You can feel turned on by looking at someone across the room. Like I said, the second you talk to them, who knows what their personality is going to be like.
Have you ever had a situation, I was just thinking about, like you found someone really attractive in a crowd, and then when you got together with them one-on-one, you lost the attraction? Because it's all contextual.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times it's like, oh, I lost that attraction. I guess this was not a sustainable attraction.
That's describing every experience I've had with a guy at the bouldering gym.
You're like, as soon as we're out of that environment, not attractive anymore.
Yeah, like,
Susie's not climbing anymore. No thanks.
I'm like, oh, you live in a van. Okay, got it. Like,
Yes.
fine. Like, totally fine. Just not for me. But like, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Oh, you boulder every day because that's you don't have a
Right.
job.
Oh, this is your entire personality. Okay, cool.
So I love how you've taken us through just like dating and how you were intentional there. Like we've said many times, it doesn't stop once you're in a relationship.
No.
What have been some of those key intentionality points that you've encountered while in these 2 years?
In my relationship.
In your relationship, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously the check-ins are one thing. In the beginning, like we set ourselves up for the relationship we have now. I told him that I have a 2-year limit. I'm like,
wow.
if at 2 years we don't know if we want to get married, then we are done. Like I'm in my 30s. I don't have time to figure it out. Like you should know by 2 years, like you should just know, especially in your 30s. And if you had a lot of experience.
not be engaged, but just at least know you're on the road to getting engaged.
I was like, yeah, like we should be ring shopping by then.
Okay.
At the very least. Like, you know, like, like I'm not wasting time. I already did that, you know? So that was something I did that was very intentional. And he got it. He was like, yeah, I get it. Like he's older than me and he wants to be a dad before he is 40. You know, it's like time just keeps rolling. So that was one thing. I told him I wanted to do check-ins from the very beginning. And we do check in with each other throughout the week, not just for our check-ins. We've gone to therapy together. You know, we're getting a prenup. Like we're doing a lot of things that just prioritize the relationship. And it's not about him being obsessed with me. Like this is another thing about dating that I really don't like. Like people are always like, but he's not chasing me. It's like, I don't want to be chased. I want a partnership. Right. So we do a lot of things to support that.
I don't want a predator.
Yeah. A stalker. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I've built intentionality into the relationship. And he's on board and I think he appreciates it a lot. Like he's been in several relationships too. You know, it didn't work out.
Any surprises along the way?
In my dating life?
Let's just say your enthusiasm for dating and then dating intentionally and then now being in a relationship. Were there any surprises between the two worlds?
I mean, I guess I definitely am surprised with after how much therapy I've been in, like how triggered I am and still in my relationship. It's like, oh, the healing really does never end. And sometimes, some days it feels like a minefield. Like
I feel you on that one.
I kid you not, guys. I was reading Hold Me Tight last night and I was triggered by reading the book.
Wow.
And I know why. So I used to read these books like next to my ex in bed, just thinking about how he would never be this kind of partner. And that's literally what came up for me as I was reading this book in bed next to my fiance.
Wow.
I'm like, oh my God, like I have to stop reading this.
Well, I think a lot of people expect that once you're in a relationship, this stuff goes away. I feel like I thought that was going to happen, and I've learned that that definitely is not the case at all.
No. What I want people to realize is you can find someone to heal with.
Yes.
Yes.
You don't have to be healed 100%.
You can find someone who's safe, who you can do all those things with. And it's not about like how tall they are, like how many times they ask you out or like where they take you. It's just
I know. Isn't that funny? I mean, like I know we say this all the time, but I feel like it deserves to be said again. The things that daters focus on do not matter in a relationship.
I know.
My girlfriend just told me the other day, she's like, ew, check out this text message I got from this guy I've been seeing. He wants to smoke a doobie for our third date. And I'm like, Sure. I mean, yes, that's maybe not the best, but like, is that really what you care about? Like, if you really care about having a relationship with someone or building something with someone, like, why are you sending the screenshot to me?
I don't know if he used the word doobie. I was
maybe there's a girl out there who's like, I would love a guy who said doobie all the time. But I mean, she just wasn't focusing on the right things and like not addressing it with him.
Right.
Yeah, I had a client who similarly like was telling me that she didn't like how the guy she was dating texts her and that she wanted him to text her more. And he started texting her more, but then she didn't like his punctuation.
Oh my God. And the best part with texting, we put such an emphasis on texting, but then when you live with your partner, you like barely text them. Like,
or you're not like scrutinizing their texts.
Like if you looked at my text with my partner, it's basically like grocery lists or like things that are just like, you know, like things that I don't know, because you're together all the time.
Yeah. I think texting is kind of important in the beginning, but we put way too much. Yeah, we put way too much on it.
Yeah. So I guess like before we go into takeaways from this conversation, like what advice would you have for someone that maybe, you know, is dating, they want to date more intentionally, they want to change their ways? What would you tell them as an elevator pitch?
The first thing I would tell someone to do is to reflect on their current dating patterns and reflect on what they've been doing and just kind of literally write it all down. Like write your recipe or your own approach to dating and just see where you may be, where there's room for improvement, where you might want to try something different, just to see if you'll get a different outcome. And that's, I think, the first step to dating intentionally, just like, what are you doing? Because you can't date intentionally if you don't know what you're doing.
Right. Like it has to be on purpose. Like there has to be some purpose.
Like take accountability. It's so easy to blame the dating pool and men and blah, blah. So it's like, no, what are you doing? Where are you looking for matches? Who are you swiping right on? What's your attitude going into dates? You know, are you going on dates after you're tired after a long day at work, or like, are you feeling energized? So that's where you got to start.
I mean, we didn't even go into date tracking. I know that's something that you feel strongly about, of just like understanding how you're feeling after each date.
Yes. Start doing that too. just see what comes up.
Yeah. I mean, the takeaways I'm having from this whole conversation is we tend to get so ahead of ourselves. And especially when we hear dating intentionally, I think a lot of people's mind, and I think my mind did go here too, is like to have a relationship, the goal. Where what I'm hearing from you, it's like checking in at every step and having the proper expectations for that step. Like a date is just a date. A text is just a text. A profile is literally a profile. Like we can't read beyond that. And at that point, we're not dating intentionally. And dating intentionally is staying true to yourself ultimately. It doesn't mean that you need to want to only have a relationship. If you purely want to have a hookup, friends with benefits, that could be dating intentionally. It's when we do opposite actions and that doesn't align. Like we hear of people all the time being like, I want a serious relationship, but I have this person still in the corner. And I was that person at one point. So
we all were.
It's really like getting clear of what you want. And I think that actually that takeaway correlates to what you were saying about like when to stop dating and really focus on a partner. At the end of the day, if you want a relationship, there's nothing in the way of that relationship happening. Like all green flags, like what are you doing by getting in your own way?
Yeah.
Like you have to stay like true to what it is you actually want and maybe take that leap if you're like hesitating.
Yes. Love it.
So true. And a similar takeaway. We have the bigger intention with dating, and then there's intentions along the way. And we have to really focus on the baby steps. You know, our actions are informed by our thoughts, and our thoughts are the intentions. So if you go into swiping mode with the bigger intention of finding a partner, you might not swipe on anybody because you're like, I'm looking for my life partner. But if you take Talia's advice there and just think, I'm just looking for someone to have a conversation with, it takes the pressure off of that stage of dating. Yeah. And it also takes the pressure off of that future casting of all of us do in dating. So just remember, you can date intentionally for the big picture, but also you have to date intentionally every step of the way and not get ahead of yourself or have misaligned actions like Julie was talking about.
You guys nailed it.
Or listen to Talia's podcast, Dating Intentionally, if you want to date intentionally.
I mean, I think for everyone too, it's just like the mindset that you had. And again, some of that probably came from the beginner's mindset, but like, how can we all have that a little more? And again, easier said than done if you feel like you've been dating for a while and it's a slog, but maybe it's a challenge to yourself of like, what are some ways that I could do this differently? How could I be more explorative and curious and all the things to bring that fun back? Like, I know for me, that was a huge pivotal point of just, we did this episode about making dating fun again with like a play expert. And that I listened to right before I met my partner. And it changed the way I showed up because I wasn't like going in there being like, they must have this, 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 and this. We have to remember that in dating. Ultimately, the intention still can be just to have fun in the moment too.
Yes, I totally agree.
So we can find Dating Intentionally on every podcast platform, I assume, and then anywhere else they should be looking for you.
I mean, I'm on TikTok and YouTube, again, same handle, like you said, Dating Intentionally, and you can slide into my DMs anytime.
Oh, really? Anytime?
Yeah,
that was an
anytime.
open invite.
Okay. We'll be there tomorrow.
I might answer, I might not, but you can definitely, I'm open. My DMs are open to any listeners with questions.
I'm sending you a playlist. I know you like this.
Can't wait.
And a Borat quote.
And for all of our listeners, thank you so much for joining us for the ride. You know, we do not spend money on marketing our podcast at all. We find about each other's podcasts through word of mouth. Like we found out about Talia's podcast, word of mouth. She found out about us through word of mouth. And you probably too, who's listening to this. So by you giving us a rating and review in Apple Podcasts, it helps us spread the word about us because you know more people need to hear these messages to make dating a better place to be. So if you have 2 seconds, just head on over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave us a rating and review, find Dateable, and then find Dating Intentionally. You can do a twofer. That's like a really good use of your time. I think Talia likes that because it's very efficient use of time.
Yes, love it.
And on that note, we're going to wrap up this episode. Stay Dateable! The Dateable podcast is part of the Frolic Media Network. Find more podcasts you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts. You can follow us on Instagram at Dateable Podcast and visit dateablepodcast.com for access to all the episodes and our premium programs. Also, make sure to subscribe today if you haven't already on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform so you are the first to get all the latest episodes. And most importantly, stay dateable.